a little small piece of hope that kind of came out of that for me was why I finally struck a nerve, right? Because I watched all these other, all these other similar events, and it seemed like there was a numbness or a way out. But I think if you watch that video, there's no way out of it.
Welcome to Project Tumbleweed, a real-time documentary about life in America during a pandemic. My name is Scott Henderson, aka Scotty Hendo, and I'll be your guide. COVID-19 has turned life upside down and exposed old, unhealed wounds. It's becoming apparent that we have a long ways to go before we get through this. I'm traveling the country to meet with people of all stripes to learn how they're adjusting to these new realities, so that you can learn lessons to apply to your own life. In this episode, we'll start on the banks of the Missouri River, traveling from western Iowa into eastern Nebraska. We'll meet with a grocery store manager, lawyer turned community developer, youth sports entrepreneur, doctoral student, professional teenager, and an emerging media innovator. Omaha and Council Bluffs played a role in the Lewis and Clark expedition, and the region was transformed the moment it was named the eastern terminus of the Transcontinental Railroad. Growing up here gave me an appreciation for the vitality of new arrivals, all eager to build their future and filled with a resilient spirit that lives on today.
The grocery business is a very interesting time right now in the grocery industry, honestly. It was declared a pandemic the night of March 11th, I guess. The next day, complete chaos. One person with multiple carts filled to the brim. It was something I never thought that I would see. Something that, yeah, maybe before a hurricane or something, but it was bare shelves, bare freezers, empty shelves, and something we just did not prepare for. I'm just thankful that I have a career in the grocery industry that I never really thought was that essential when something like this happens. And now finding out that we are one of the last places that will close during something like this. Financial security and having a great job with the company I work for is fantastic. I love that. Even when there's a global pandemic, I will still be going to work and still be putting food on the table for my family. I really am thankful for that and lucked out in that.
So currently I serve as the president and CEO of 75 North Revitalization Corp., which is a neighborhood-based community development corporation. We work to kind of bring this neighborhood back to life. It was a former site of a public housing project. I think oftentimes people, if you are in kind of a space in your life where you're a little bit insulated from some of the realities that people are facing right now, it's easy to lose sight of the fact that your experience is not everybody's experience. My first thought with George Floyd was, the first thing that I thought about was, well, what's different about this one? And I think it was that over the course of 8 minutes and 46 seconds, you watch somebody's life slip away versus traumatic kind of acute incidents, right? But I think the length of time and kind of the callousness with which he was executed is what made it resonate with people of color, like with white people, for them to watch that and say, this is heinous, this is barbaric, this is not American justice, this is not what we pride ourselves on or whatever. And so that was the first thing that kind of crossed my mind. And then when you saw kind of this rolling wave of protests across the country and sustained protest, that was powerful.
COVID-19 became real to me in kind of a unique way. I was running a basketball tournament in Fremont, Nebraska, which is a town about 25 miles from Elkhorn. It was our first year running this tournament. We had around 160 teams come to town. The first night of the tournament, as we were getting set up, we heard on the radio that the first case of COVID had been detected in Nebraska. And I thought to myself, well, here it comes. Sometime here in the next few weeks, this is going to be real, not understanding what that meant. It took me some time, probably a good hour, to really just soak it all in and think to myself, what does this mean? And as I started to educate myself, thought to myself, well, this isn't good. Emotionally, when we had to make the decision to shut down our tournament, it was kind of gut-wrenching. but at the same time, we knew that we were doing it for the right reason. And so when we put all our ducks in a row and we put all our priorities out there in front of us, we knew that we had made the best decision. So even though it was a very difficult, gut-wrenching decision, we did it comfortably, knowing that it was the right thing to do.
I've always sought work with meaning, work with purpose that helped people be better or do better. This is a unique moment in time for me for so many reasons, right? It's not just the pandemic, it's also being a wife for the first time, it's being a parent for the first time. And layered into this for us is I'm also the parent of a biracial child with the Black Lives Matter movement that is happening at the same time. That's added an interesting dynamic of, what's my, how do I help him through this? I'm cautiously optimistic about where we'll be with starting to break down the racial inequalities or building up racial equalities. I hope that I'm cautiously optimistic because I always want to believe the best in people. I just want to believe it. And I think that humanity wants to survive. And I don't think we survive being negative. I think we survive by finding hope and by finding love and by finding belief and support in each other and working together to get us to a better place.
My whole life I've worked with kids. I think I just always wanted to be a kid, and the biggest way to stay a kid is to work with kids. And so from summer camps to after school programs, and then as I got older, I started taking jobs as a social worker and working with at-risk youth on that level. I realized in Lincoln specifically, there was no place for kids to go that didn't connect. I think the thing that's heartbreaking right now is I'm watching people who think they know more about the greater good that's going on in the world than they don't have any concept of how much of an impact they could make locally because they're just not paying attention to it. And then COVID hit, and then Black Lives Matter hit. Now everybody's like, well, who's my city council member? And who's the chief of police? And nobody even knew who these people were before. And it's like all of a sudden you have this local interest. And so what I would say is get to know your community, get to know your people, hold your council members accountable by their first and last name. Follow them on the internet, pay attention to the policies they vote for. You need to know these things. And if you're a young person watching this right now, you have the biggest voice right now because you understand how the internet works. Skate culture is the ultimate culture of progression and grit, and you don't give up and you don't stop. And it's that push yourself. And for us, it was, and skateboarding is a special thing too, where it doesn't care what color you are, it doesn't care where your parents are from, it doesn't care what your GPA is, it doesn't care how much money's in your bank account. It's this piece of plywood with metal and wheels attached to it, and the world is your obstacle. And there's so much creativity in this place. And we built it in a way that a kid could push around and skate it 1,000 different ways if they wanted to. And I think for us, it was just skate culture here really is community, and it's that perseverance and it's that fearlessness to try to push yourself to do something that you haven't done before. And I think that's what's so attractive about skate culture.
Well, once things shut down and we knew we couldn't come into the Carson Centre anymore, our professors collaborated with Ben Crimer, our technologist in residence here, and we built the centre inside Mozilla Hub. So we actually took a SketchUp model of the Carson Centre and put it inside Mozilla Hubs, and our students took all of their work online. So they took the videos they'd made in Unity, the animations they'd made, they took the worlds they'd built in speculative design class and storytelling lab, and they took that into Mozilla Hubs and built it out online. And what was so exciting about that was instead of having it in a physical venue like here for an open studio, we had it online, but it meant that people from all around the world could come. And so many students actually had family reunions inside their creations because mum and dad could come in even if they weren't actually in Lincoln, or grandma could come and visit. So it was exciting. I think in one room there was 4 generations of one family. The Johnny Carson Centre for Emerging Media Arts is a brand new initiative made possible by a $20 million gift from the Johnny Carson Foundation and leveraged to be a $57 million investment from the University of Nebraska, Lincoln. So we're an undergraduate program where students get a grounding in computational media, visual expression and design and storytelling, where they'll go off to become entrepreneurs or to become media makers. And the program was designed in an age of artificial intelligence or of intelligent machines, so that our students are going to be robot proof and be able to work alongside the machines, not be replaced by them.
If you're watching this right now, there's a lot of young people in our communities who really need adults, people who care, people who are interested in giving them an opportunity at upward mobility. And I would just say, at some point, there's a huge demographic of people who have to stop watching and start doing.
I think the biggest message is to love, right? Right? Because from love we have compassion, from love we have belief, from love we have hope, from love we can process grief, from love we can build, through love we listen, through love we seek to understand.
Returning to where I was born and grew up 20 years after leaving here has given me a new perspective on the landscape my family has called home since the late 1800s. We have unhealed generational wounds that require each of us to acknowledge them and then begin to solve in local, immediate ways. The resilient spirit that has resided here since the time of the indigenous peoples whose names and languages dot our maps is within our reach too. We just need to choose to embrace that inner strength so we can build a more just, healthy future together. That brings us to the end of this episode. In the show notes below, you can find links to the full-length rough cut interviews of everyone featured here. There's a treasure trove of insights for you to discover. If you like this episode, please leave a comment and share the link with your friends.